I think that we talked about a little bit on Monday, but as the reporting is sort of expanded our knowledge of what exactly analyst Connor Stallions was putting together, which again, hilarious. Amazing job by the script writers. The fact that the center of this is a former military man named Connor Stallions, but latest reporting indicates that not only did Connor Stallions purchase tickets to 12 other Big Ten schools, but also tickets for 4 schools outside of the Big Ten who were identified either as playoff contenders or playoff contenders were playing in that game. There's also a record of Stallions buying tickets to the 2021 and 2022 SEC title games. Shout out to Kirby Smart, who says, I don't know if anything came of that, paraphrasing here, but a great response right there. Also, in total, 35 games, 17 stadiums. ESPN reporting that the NCAA has been sent a video of evidence of a person sitting in a seat associated with a ticket that Stallions purchased, appearing to use a smartphone to take video of the sideline. And that is where I think we jumped from this is funny, everyone does it, to at least creating a call for the NCAA, for the Big Ten, which also has some punishment power to get involved in this scandal. Because if you are sending an analyst to another game and then using a cell phone video, we have no longer gotten to the realm of if you could do it in 1975, then, it's fair game now. We have used advanced technologies to be able to put this all together. Now we will get to what the Big Ten can do, what the NCAA can do, whether any of it will matter. But Danny, do you think it's too far? Do you think this is too elaborate? Like, as it has escalated, it certainly has become more technologically elaborate, and the web, is much bigger than I think the initial, he's just great at decoding signals. He's watching tape and he's cracking the code.
I do. There's always been gamesmanship involved. Hey, let's try to figure this out. I think this crosses a line that is very serious, and I think it should be taken seriously. And I think that someone needs to step up, whether it's Tony Petitti with the Big Ten, Charlie Baker with the NCAA, after we get the investigation done and complete. Like, what more do you need? But I think this is serious. I think this crosses a line more so than what most schools do. Now, in saying that, I've had 2 people who work as broadcasters who sit next to head coaches who coached in the last 5 years, and both of them, their opinion is everybody's doing this, and they sit next to head coaches. Now, I've been out of the game a long time, so maybe it's changed. And with all the technologies that are at disposal, everyone's trying to do it. But I think it's very, very similar to what happened with Houston Astros. Like, they weren't the only team that was doing that in baseball. They took it to a level where it was working, and they also got busted, so they got made an example of. I have a hunch that's probably what's going to happen with Michigan.
Do you know why we don't hear other coaches calling out Michigan for this?
Outside of Greg Schiano's very vague halftime interview on the Big Ten Network when he said, there's some stuff going on, some stuff that's not right.
Which I honestly, I think might have been about Michigan's clapping to try to get them to false start. Like, I initially thought that might have been about sign stealing, but now I think it might not have been.
Disconcerting signals.
Yeah. The reason why you don't see coaches calling out Michigan for this is the same reason why you hear coaches just kind of blanket complaining about tampering, but never actually calling anybody out for it. It's because they know they do it themselves, right? And it's glass houses. And so they can just do a general complaint about it. But I agree with Danny. Like, I've talked to coaches on this. I do not think that other teams are so just kind of rogue with it and like just sloppy with how Michigan's guy did this. But I absolutely think that other teams are sending people into parking garages with video cameras to spy on practice. I absolutely think other teams bribe trainers and like student managers for injury info earlier in the week. I think they try to hack each other's Exos, which is the video platform that they're on. I completely think that like coaches who have grudges against other coaches who might have fired him will go to another school the next week that they know that opponent's going to play and tell them exactly what they do to get back at the guy that let him go. Guys, like, I'm not saying the game is rigged because I don't believe it's rigged, but I think it's a lot dirtier. The difference here, to me, is that Michigan got caught, and now we'll see what kind of punishment they get.
Every team calls their plays with placards on the sidelines that have a bunch of stupid-looking symbols and cartoons and whatnot on them. and every team puts a curtain around those on the sideline. Why are they doing that? Because they know that, like them, every single team is trying to steal or decipher the signals of the team that they're playing so they can get some kind of advantage on the field. I do think that Michigan went a little too far with this. I don't even want to say too far. I think a little too stupid with this one, the way that this operation was going. But Chip, I will disagree with the assertion that cell phones are advanced technology. I'm pretty sure everybody in the stadium has one. I think if Michigan were using a satellite to get these images, I would go with advanced technology.
I was saying advanced technology, like if he is getting all of the video and if he has some kind of software that can quickly decode, all of the signals that are there. I mean, the thing that makes this awesome, in my opinion, is that we have a program in Michigan that has always had a little bit of we do it the right way. And now you're just being exposed with the exact opposite. I experienced that with North Carolina and the academic scandal. I mean, no one says the Carolina way anymore after all that went down. Then the other side is that there are so many passionate rival fan bases. I mean, multiple schools that are doing everything they can. I mean, have y'all seen them Zapruder all the different film and zoom in even closer, and they've got stallions right behind the coordinator, and they zoom in on the little play card that he's got, and it's not football plays on it. It is the silhouettes of hand signals grouped in different categories so that he's sitting behind a coordinator, looking at the signals, looking at his card and telling them what to do. And then the defensive coordinator signals it into the team. The fact that all of that can be uncovered by these absolutely passionate fan bases has made this a bigger deal within the college football conversation than it is within the coaches right now.
The internet sleuths are the best.
It's incredible.
You're gonna go find them. I mean, how about the one from the Tennessee site that had this in January and December that was out there saying, I heard there's a Michigan coach that's not allowed to talk to Harbaugh. I mean, that's pretty wild. To Tom's point about the coaches and the placards and the curtains. So I was in Columbus and it blew me away. You watch it on TV and you see the thing unravel and you're like, whatever. You're just that's part of the game. I had not, and I've been used to, usually it's the backup quarterbacks. You'll have the second, third, and fourth string quarterback and they're all there doing their little, signs and everything. And I've been used to that. But I would have not used to is there were 4, maybe 5 assistant coaches. And it's crazy how they copy each other's things because they're all wearing brightly colored yellow, orange, neon, blue, these different 4 colors. So I put a video on because I was so blown away by it. And they're all furiously giving their signals. And then there's a player. Now the poor backup quarterbacks, they don't do anything. They have to hold up the placard above them. And then so I quickly turned to the other sideline. And guess what? Penn State's defensive coaches, same thing. Blue shirt, yellow shirt, green shirt. And they're furiously doing all these signals as well. And all I kept thinking was, what a massive waste of time, energy, and resources. And thankfully, I did see Matt Rule call this out, and good for him. Now, he didn't call out but he called out the coaches who vote against the technology, the radio, the comms and the helmets. He said, we just need to go there. And I do think it's pretty interesting that this bowl season, outside of the playoffs, they will actually be able to use communication, coach to quarterback communication, which would solve all of these problems. I think we're going to get that sooner rather than later, which would be a great thing, but it's such a massive waste of time. And just another, I used to, as a player, you're not super involved with this. And I was more worried about calling plays. Going back to Coach Bowden, Bud will remember this. Pensacola Street there used to be a road, right? That road, it was kind of elevated and it would go by the practice fields and ran right between the stadium and the practice fields. And there would be people jogging, there'd be some good looking girls. So you kind of get a little distracted sometimes. And occasionally they'd stop and watch. And Coach Bowden never coached at practice. He stood up in the tower. It's a 3 or 4, and he just watched practice. But the times you heard him talk, there were 2 times. One, if there was a trick play, he'd get on his bullhorn and be like, all right, let's run this a little differently. The other time, he would call down to security and he would notice somebody standing watching practice. And he would say, no, have him move, let's go. And Coach Bowden was the nicest guy ever. He was paranoid about it. When I went to the NFL, Dan Reeves, we used to have practice in the bubble. It was glorious outside, 7 degrees, sunny. And I'm like, why are we going in the bubble? And everybody's like, Dan's paranoid. He's worried they're going to steal our signals because there was a hotel across the street that was like 10 stories that they could video. He's like, oh, we're playing the Cowboys. He knows they're going to try to steal signals, whatever team it was. And I used to think, man, these coaches are so paranoid. Now I totally get it, because I think it's been happening like we're talking about. It's been happening forever. It's just the latest team that I think is going to get made an example of. And I say good, like let's get it cleaned up as much as possible. Last thing, I'm yapping too much. Just like the Astros, it's still really hard to hit a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, even if you know it's coming. Even if you know you have a man coverage, it's still hard to do it, but it definitely gives you an edge.
There's a play in the Kentucky-Georgia game where Georgia has their massive like white sheet on poles up now, and Georgia gets the first down pretty clearly. You can sort of infer it, but I couldn't see it. I do think at a certain point it becomes sort of a fairness issue if this, like the size of the things that you're holding up to block up people from seeing your signs inhibits the TV broadcast. That's where we may get pushed to have radio communication in the helmet. Because if ESPN or CBS or Fox is like, hey, this is blocking our broadcast shot, which makes for a bad TV product, which these networks run the sport. The conferences might think they run the sport. The networks run the sport. If these get bigger as more of a precaution, like we saw in Kentucky, Georgia, I think the networks should be like, hey, how much are we paying you guys? You really can't get radio comms in the helmet for the quarterback and the Mike linebacker?
Well, that's where the breakaway comes. Like, there's an easy off-ramp to this conversation, which is like,
Yeah.
well, when they get rid of the NCAA and college football is only the big dogs, then guess what? Advanced in-person scouting is not going to be a violation of a rule that was put in 1994 because the small schools were tired of getting out-scouted. And then you're going to have in-person helmet comm because no one's going to say we can't afford it because you're just in an entirely different world that is only the big dogs. Like, that to me does seem like a sensible future that we might be 3, 4, 5, 6, however many years away from. But it doesn't, it still brings us back to the present where it does appear that there is evidence that Michigan has violated an NCAA rule on top of other active NCAA violations, of which Jim Harbaugh has already self-imposed a ban for the start of this season. There is also, go ahead.
Oops, sorry. In the meantime, my prediction is what you're going to see is like the Big Ten and SEC helmet communication will be allowed for conference games. Non-conference games from the other smaller schools that don't want to pay for it, they will have to go back to the old school signals. But you will see within the next year or two, conference games will have direct coach to quarterback communication.
That'd be
You don't
great.
think they'll let everybody go? Because I don't think it's that expensive. I mean,
It's not, will you let everybody go? It's the other schools don't want to pay for it. Most of these athletic departments are already operating at a loss.
I think it's probably $10,000 to have four helmets max, like outfitted with the technology. I mean, the technology we're using, webcams, speakers, microphones, like I get, and somebody put in here, they could easily be hacked. Then you can choose. If you want to spend a little bit more, you can. I'm not worried about getting hacked. It was pretty crazy. When I was in Denver, occasionally they'd have a problem with some interference and you hear like this Mexican polka station, like whenever the microphone came on. I'm assuming the technology again has gotten better, but yeah, you could hear Mike Shanahan, giving the play call in the background. Like, you just hear it. Like, going on.
Z76 FY.
You could hack the frequency, but there's a big difference between being able to hack the frequency and then relay that information to the field in time. So
Right.
I would also say another aspect of this story that I think is going to lead to problems is that the coverage it's getting, like Chip, you mentioned, like the message board sleuthing and the reaction everybody has to it because it is Michigan and it is a scandal and all this kind of stuff. People are going to be very disappointed by the quote unquote punishments that come from this, because the fact is nothing is going to happen to Michigan this year. There is not going to be any sort of ban or vacated wins for Michigan this season. There will not be a decision on any of this until after the year. And when there is a decision, it's really not going to be as bad as some people think. Like we talked about it before the show. Kansas was just a part of an FBI investigation that resulted in somebody going to prison. What happened to the program?
Oh, they won a national championship.
Yeah, nothing. There was no on-court punishments. I really don't think whatever comes of this for Michigan is going to be very punitive, and it is just going to lead to a lot of people being like, oh my God, they let them get away with it. They let them get away with it. I can't believe it. But it was the same thing with the Patriots. It was the same thing with the Astros. You can't, there's not enough evidence. This is not an FBI or a police investigation. It's the NCAA.
So there's a lot of problems with the punishment thought. right? One, what is the prescribed penalty? I don't really see one because I'm not really sure that the rule contemplated this in the way that it went down. The NCAA moves really slowly. So I'm pretty confident, not 100%, nothing's ever 100% with the NCAA. Pretty confident the NCAA won't do anything to Michigan this year. If they tried to, Michigan would sue them and tie this up in the courts well after the national title.
Listen, even with appeal, like they could, there are still so many steps down the line for this to unfurl. There's no, in my opinion, there is no way we see the NCAA issue anything. And what you could put together is to bundle all of these violations into one big case, and you hit Jim Harbaugh with, failure to monitor or lead an atmosphere of compliance. I think Michigan probably has this set. I'm just guessing that Michigan probably has this set up so that when Jim Harbaugh can deny knowledge, he probably can deny knowledge. Like they probably are not going to be able to prove it. They're only going to hit him with those new NCAA rules that can punish you. And guess what? Congratulations. He's now the head coach of the Chicago Bears.
Or the Chargers.
Yeah, or the Chargers.
Now, I do think that there is something that probably, in my opinion, will happen to Michigan this year. And that's that Tony Petitti, the new commissioner of the Big Ten, he is not going to want a snitch war going on between his top programs, right? And I'm not saying Ohio State or Penn State or whoever's snitching, but like clearly they are not happy with this. If you look at some of the precautions that Ohio State has taken within their program, they're kind of paranoid about this thing, and maybe they should be, right? Based on what we've seen. If you're Petitti, don't you try to nip this in the bud and go to Michigan. And it's kind of like, you ever get in trouble in school and your mom or dad talks to you and like, hey, I got called in the principal's office here. I need to know what happened. Okay. So I don't look like an idiot when I go in there and say, hey, Bud just did this, whatever. And then they're like, no, he actually did this, and this too. So Michigan, I need you to come clean with me if I'm Tony Petitti. What exactly do you guys think was going on? Let's get on the same page here. I need to issue you a punishment that the public will accept, right? Maybe that's the coordinator that we've seen you standing next to with what was either signs for the opponent or instructions on how to do the YMCA. Take your pick, right? Like the guy standing next to you and you talking to him the whole time, maybe the coordinator, maybe he needs to sit a game or two. Like I need a little pound of flesh here to keep people happy that we're actually doing something. And I don't want this snitch war going on all the way for the rest of the season and have it be a storyline through the playoffs, right? Let's get this thing done. But I need you to be honest with me. Like, is there more stuff coming? Were you guys doing other types of electronic surveillance? Is that stuff true? Is that stuff going to come out? Like, I need to know just how widespread this was. We're clearly going to sacrifice Stallions. I probably need to suspend a coordinator for a game or two. That's what I would do if I was the Big Ten. And if you're Michigan, you probably should get on board with that.
Those are the tools that the Big Ten has. And that's what we're looking at. No NCAA punishment is going to come. And I will say, this enforcement from the NCAA, kind of vengeful, right? I mean, just think about the way they treated it. I thought we had an agreed upon suspension plan. Oh, no. We're going to take it all the way to the end. Or, the statements in the Tez Walker situation. I mean, they're, got a little nasty edge to them. I mean, I'm sure they're going to try to, beef up whatever they can do, but I don't think any of it will impact
death rattle.
I don't think any of it will impact the way. How about this? It doesn't impact the way I look at Michigan football. All right, we get paid to talk about college football and talk about these teams. Doesn't change the way that I think about it. We talk about this because it's a big part of the conversation, and there will be some fallout. I don't think any of it will impact significantly Michigan's efforts to do what it appears to be on track to do, which is playing for a national championship in late November, early December, and New Year's Day.
So Kevin Smith in the chat says, maybe the assistant or coordinator needs to sit a game or two. Bruh, that's such a slap on the wrist. It's insulting. That's what I think they're going to get. A slap on the wrist. I think it's sort of a tacit acknowledgement that other teams are doing this. Michigan, you were just so dumb in how you did it. You used your own freaking name to buy tickets on both sides of the stadium.
This is the
and you got
underdiscussed
paid
part of the
back
story.
on Venmo. Guys, it's
the public Venmo
it's burner phones, right?
Bud's got a burner just sitting there for no reason.
Well, I shot a video earlier, so It's prepaid debit cards. Okay, what are you doing with this Venmo? Just
The biggest takeaway from this story that nobody has discussed is the fact that it is clear the academic standards to be an assistant on Michigan staff are much lower than it is to be a player on the team.
it's so dumb. Like the way that he executed this is so dumb that it really helps Harbaugh's plausible deniability claim.
Agree.
Harbaugh, it could easily be like, there's no way in hell me, Jim Harbaugh, who makes $10 or $12 million a year, would have this be the way this scheme is executed. Are you kidding me? Like, unless that's just genius. He's like, do it
Billy,
so dumb.
Billy in the chat said, watch the SEC Shorts video is pretty good, where they did a little spoof of this. It's worth the watch if you go check it out.
Yeah, so we'll see. I felt like it, we needed to give it a little bit of time.